My brother sent me a text at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. We changed the access code to the storage unit and the gate. The house account has been closed to you. We think it's better this way. I read it 3 times. Then I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter and finished washing my dishes. I don't know why I did that. Maybe because some part of me had been waiting for that message for years and had already practiced not falling apart. Let me back up. I'm the oldest of 3. My brother is 2 years younger than me. My sister is 5 years younger. Growing up, we weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Until my dad lost his job when I was 16 and everything quietly started falling apart in the way that families do when money gets tight and nobody talks about it directly. My mom picked up extra shifts. My dad picked up odd jobs. And I picked up the habit of making myself small so I wouldn't be one more thing they had to worry about. I got a scholarship for college, paid for everything else with part-time work, graduated with a degree in accounting, got hired at a firm in the city, and for the first time in my life I felt like I had room to breathe. I was 26 when my dad called and told me the house needed a new roof, $42,000. He didn't ask directly. He never did. What he said was, "I don't know how we're going to manage this one." And I said, "I'll take care of it." Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. I paid the roofing company directly, didn't ask to be paid back. Told myself it was a gift and tried to mean it. 6 months later, my mom called about the HVAC system, $11,000. Then my brother needed help with his car. He was between jobs. Just needed a few months of payments covered. He'd pay me back when he landed something. $800 a month for 7 months. He never landed something. He stopped mentioning it and I stopped bringing it up. I kept a spreadsheet. Not because I plan to collect, but because I'm an accountant, and that's just how my brain works. Every transfer, every Venmo, every check I wrote with my actual hand. I kept it in a folder on my laptop labeled Family and tried not to open it too often because every time I did it made me feel like a bad person for having made it in the first place. By the time I was 29, I had given my family a little over $63,000. My brother had paid back none of it. My sister had paid back $400, which she sent in a single Venmo with a heart emoji and a note that said, "Love you, sis. Sorry it took so long." And I cried at my desk at work because it was $400, and it was the only time anyone had ever acknowledged that any of it was a loan. My parents never used the word loan. They also never used the word gift. What they said was, "You're doing so well and you've always been the responsible one, and we knew we could count on you." And I took those phrases and turned them into a justification for giving more. When I was 30, my parents told me they wanted to open a small business. My mom had always wanted a flower shop. She'd been talking about it my whole life. This little corner store with buckets of peonies in the window, a chalkboard sign outside. She had the name picked out and everything. My dad had found a space to lease. The rent was $2,200 a month. They needed first and last and a deposit, plus startup inventory, a point-of-sale system, some basic renovations. They had a number, $45,000 to get started. I want to be honest about what happened in my head when they told me. There was a version of me that said no immediately. That version knew the spreadsheet by heart. That version had done the math on what $63,000 would look like invested over 15 years and felt something clench in her chest every time she thought about it. But there was another version, the one who had watched my mom work doubles for years, the one who remembered her cutting flowers from the neighbor's yard and arranging them in mason jars just because she loved it. And that version said yes before I'd finished thinking. I transferred the money in 2 installments. I did not ask for paperwork. I did not ask to be a partner in the business. I told myself I was doing it out of love, and I told myself that was enough. The shop opened in April. I went to the opening and I stood in the corner with a plastic cup of champagne and watched my mom hug every person who walked through the door, and I felt genuinely happy. That part is true. For about 3 months, I felt like I'd done the right thing. Then the rent went up. Then the refrigeration unit broke. Then my dad decided they needed a website and hired someone to build it without getting a quote first. And the bill was $8,000 for something that looked like it was made in 2009. Every call from my mom started the same way. I hate to even bring this up, and every time I brought it up for her. How much do you need? By the time I was 32, the total in my spreadsheet was $112,000. I had been dating someone for 2 years by then. I'll call him my partner because that's what he was. He knew, in general, that I helped my family financially. He did not know the number. When I showed him the spreadsheet one night because I needed someone else to see it, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Does your brother work?" I said yes. My brother had been at the same company for 3 years by that point. Decent salary, new truck. He and his wife had taken a vacation to Mexico the previous winter. My partner didn't say anything else. He just looked at me. I didn't sleep well that night. A few weeks later, I found out about the refinance by accident. My mom mentioned it in a phone call about something else entirely. She was talking about the shop, about how they'd finally stabilized, and she said something like, "Now that we've got the house sorted," and I asked what she meant, and there was a pause, and she said, "Oh, we refinanced. Last spring. Your brother helped us navigate it." I said, "Helped you navigate it how?" She said, "He handled all the paperwork. He really came through for us." I didn't say anything. She kept talking. I stopped hearing her. When I looked it up, and I did look it up, because I'm an accountant and I know how public records work, the refinance had pulled $80,000 in equity out of the house. Cash out. The kind of refinance you do when you need a lump sum. The flower shop renovations. The refrigeration unit. The website. The stabilization my mom had mentioned so casually. They hadn't needed me for any of that. They had used the equity in a house that my money had helped keep. They had gotten a better interest rate partly because the house was in good condition, because I had paid for the roof and the HVAC and the dozen other things over the years that kept the property value from dropping, and my brother had handled the paperwork. I sat with that information for 2 weeks. I went to work, I made dinner, I talked to my partner about normal things, and at night I kept opening the spreadsheet and staring at the number like it was going to change. $112,000. Then something happened that I didn't expect. My mom texted me a photo. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post from the shop's page. A customer had written a glowing review and my mom had responded to it, and in her response she wrote, "This shop exists because of the people who believed in us. My son stepped up when we needed him most and made this dream possible. We are so grateful. My son." I read it 4 more times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something. I wasn't. I called my brother. He didn't answer. I texted him, "Can we talk?" He replied 3 hours later. "Sure, what's up?" I said, "About the shop and the refinance." He didn't reply after that. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, asked how I was doing. I asked her about the Facebook post. There was a silence. She said, "I didn't mean it the way you're taking it." I asked her how she meant it. She said my brother had done a lot of the legwork. I asked if she remembered who gave her $45,000 to open the shop. She said, "Of course I do, and we're grateful, but you didn't want to be involved the same way he was." I said, "What does that mean?" She said he had been present, had helped them make decisions, had been around. The implication was clear. I had given money and then gone back to my life, and that was a choice I had made, and apparently it was the wrong one. I didn't yell. I want to be clear about that. I said, "I need some time to think," and I ended the call. My partner found me sitting on the kitchen floor 20 minutes later, not crying, just sitting. He sat down next to me and didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" And that was the first time anyone had asked me that question in a very long time. I want to be honest about the next part too. I thought about walking away quietly, just stopping. No more transfers, no more "of course, how much do you need?" No confrontation, no spreadsheet waved in anyone's face. Just done. And maybe that would have been cleaner. But I had spent 6 years being quiet, and the quiet had cost me $112,000 and apparently also my name on a Facebook post, and I think I was finally out of quiet. I called a lawyer, not a family therapist, not a mediator, a lawyer. I explained the situation. She asked if I had documentation. I said I had a 6-year-old spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and bank transfer references for every single transaction. She told me that recovering money given without a written loan agreement is difficult but not impossible, depending on circumstances. She told me to gather everything. She also told me something I hadn't thought about. Does your family know what you know about the refinance? They didn't. I wrote a letter, not an email, an actual letter, printed and signed. I sent a copy to my parents and a copy to my brother. In it, I laid out the full history, every amount, every date. I included the total. I noted that the refinance had been done without informing me, that my contributions to the home's maintenance had directly supported the property value that made the refinance possible, and that I considered the cash-out funds partially connected to my investments in the property. I did not threaten legal action in the letter. I asked for a conversation. My brother texted me that evening. "This is insane. You gave that money as gifts." I replied, "Did I? When did we agree on that?" He didn't reply. My mom called. She was crying. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this to the family, why I was making everything about money, why I couldn't just be happy that the shop was successful. I listened. When she finished, I said, "I need you to read the letter again, all of it. And then I'd like to talk." She didn't call back that night. 2 days later, my dad called. My dad, who had initiated almost none of the requests directly, who had let my mom make the calls, who I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I had always given a partial pass. He asked if we could meet in person. I drove to their house on a Saturday morning. My brother was there. My mom made coffee. Nobody offered me a cup. My brother started. He said the money I'd given over the years was given freely, that I'd never mentioned expecting repayment, that there were no signed agreements, that I was essentially trying to retroactively call gifts loans because I was upset about a Facebook post. I let him finish. Then I opened my laptop and turned it so they could all see the spreadsheet, row by row. 6 years of dates and amounts. I said, every time I transferred money, I was responding to a specific request for help. I didn't volunteer most of this. I was asked. Sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, but I was asked. I looked at my mom. "You called me and said you didn't know how you were going to manage the roof. I offered because I thought you needed me to. If it was a gift, why did you ask?" She didn't answer. My dad said, "We never meant for it to be a burden." I said, "I know. And I never meant to feel erased." The conversation lasted almost 2 hours. Nobody yelled. That surprised me. What also surprised me was that somewhere around the 90-minute mark, my dad started crying. Not dramatic crying, just quiet, tired tears. He said, "I'm sorry. I don't think we understood what we were doing." My brother did not apologize. He said he still thought I was being unfair. He said the refinance money had gone back into the business and they had every right to access their own equity. Technically, he wasn't wrong. Technically. We didn't reach a resolution that day. I drove home feeling hollowed out in a way that wasn't entirely bad, like something that had been sitting heavy in me for years had finally been said out loud and I didn't have to carry it alone anymore. Over the following 3 weeks, my parents and I exchanged emails. My lawyer helped me draft mine. We were not going to court. That was never really the point. And the practical reality was that recovering the money through litigation would cost nearly as much as I might recover and would take years. But the emails did something the conversation hadn't quite managed. They got my parents to stop framing everything as a misunderstanding and start acknowledging specific transactions. My mom sent me a message that I've read many times since. She wrote that she knew the business post had been hurtful and that she should have credited me specifically. She wrote that she had not understood, until she saw the full spreadsheet, how much had accumulated over the years, and that seeing it all in one place made her realize they had been treating me like a resource instead of a daughter. That sentence, a resource instead of a daughter, I didn't cry when I read it. I think I'd already used up whatever I had for this situation. I just saved the email and sat quietly for a while. My brother never apologized. He sent one message that said, "I hope we can move past this at some point." I did not reply. My parents agreed to repay a portion, not the full amount. We all knew that wasn't realistic. Between the shop finances and the mortgage and their retirement situation, we agreed on $30,000, paid over 2 years. I have a signed document. My lawyer drafted it and my dad signed it at our office on a Tuesday afternoon, and when he handed the pen back, he looked older than I'd ever seen him look. I'm telling you all of this not because it has a clean ending. It doesn't. I still talk to my parents. We're not close in the way we were, or in the way I told myself we were. Because I think some part of what I believed about us was held together by the fact that I kept paying, kept being needed, kept showing up with a transfer, and telling myself that meant we were okay. We're building something different now, slower, more honest. My brother and I haven't spoken in 8 months. His wife texted me once to say she hoped we could work things out eventually. I said I did too, which was mostly true. The $30,000 isn't the point. I want to be clear about that. The point was that the number in my spreadsheet was real, and the years were real, and being written out of a Facebook post was, in some small, absurd way, the thing that finally made me say, "This is real, and I am allowed to say so." The flower shop is still open. My mom sends me pictures sometimes, a new arrangement she's proud of. A slow Tuesday with light coming through the window just right. I look at them and I feel something complicated, which I think is probably the most honest version of love that's available to me right now. I closed the spreadsheet about 2 months ago, moved the folder to my archive, and didn't label it anything new. Some things you keep because they're true, and some things you put away because you're finally done needing to look at them. I'm not the resource anymore. That's the part I'm still learning to believe. I used to think that keeping quiet was the same thing as being generous, that if I didn't bring it up, didn't ask for anything back, didn't make anyone uncomfortable, that meant I was a good person, a good daughter, a good sister. What I understand now is that silence isn't the same as grace. Sometimes silence is just fear wearing a nicer outfit. For 6 years I kept a spreadsheet I never showed anyone. $112,000, documented in neat rows with dates and transfer references and amounts I told myself didn't matter because love isn't supposed to have a balance sheet. And that's true, actually. Love isn't supposed to. But what was happening in my family wasn't love doing the asking. It was habit. It was the comfortable knowledge that I would say yes, that I always said yes, that I had built my entire role in that family around being the one who said yes. The thing about giving without ever naming what you're doing is that other people get to name it for you, and they will name it in whatever way is most convenient for them. My brother named it a gift. My mom named it my choice. The Facebook post named my brother the one who made the dream possible. And I'd handed them all the tools to do exactly that, because I had never once said out loud, "This is what I'm doing, and this is what I need you to understand about it." What changed me wasn't the money. It was seeing my own name missing from something I had built. That's when I understood that staying quiet had not protected my relationships. It had just delayed an honest version of them. There's a kind of courage that doesn't look like courage from the outside. It's not dramatic. It's opening a laptop and turning it around so someone can see a spreadsheet. It's writing a letter with dates on it. It's sitting in a lawyer's office on a Tuesday and not apologizing for being there. Nobody applauds that kind of courage. There's no moment where the music swells. You just do it, and then you sit in your car afterward and feel exhausted, and also, quietly, like yourself again. My dad cried at that table. I don't think he's a bad man. I think he got used to a system that worked for him and never examined the cost of it. Not the financial cost, the human one. The cost to me. My brother never apologized, and I've made a kind of peace with that too, because an apology you have to drag out of someone isn't really an apology. It's a transaction, and I was done with transactions dressed up as family moments. What I kept from all of it was this. The people in your life will treat you according to the boundaries you set, or the absence of them. Not because they're cruel, though some are, but because human beings are good at adjusting to what's available. I made myself available without limit, and they used what was available. That's not entirely their fault. It's also mine. I'm not the resource anymore. That sentence took me years to be able to say, and I'm still learning to believe it in the parts of me that still reach for the phone when someone in my family sounds stressed. But I know it's true, and knowing it, even when it's hard, is the only version of this story I can live with.